Everybody, welcome back. So today I want to talk about perfectionism, and kind of been looking forward to this one for a couple of reasons. One, the last couple of weeks have been pretty heavy. I think both in terms of the videos I've made and probably watching them. And the other thing is that this topic really came up as a result of a discussion I was having with some peers, which is kind of exactly the whole point, right? Getting together with peers, doing these videos, or talking with people is all about generating introspection and reflection. So yeah, that's what I want to talk about today. I'm out at Waterford Ponds. I'm really just enjoying what may be one of the last good days of paddling for the season, you know, in terms of it being nice and warm. I found a nice spot here out of the wind, so hopefully the audio is good. And yeah, perfectionism, that need for everything to be perfect, and for everything to be just so. So really it came about, I was talking to some people after the ride and just happened to mention that, you know, yeah, I'm in school. And one of the guys who was there, is a former police officer, he'd gone back to school, and he asked me, he said, well, how do you do with your studies? He said, because, you know, he said he struggled with basically the studying and you know, the schoolwork. And I said, actually, schoolwork's awesome. You know, I'm rocking like 95+% average for all my grades, and yeah, killing it. And he said, wow, that's awesome. And that kind of made me go, is it really? Yeah, it's great that I've got good grades. That's important, you know, especially trying to move on to a new career and finish school. Absolutely. But I had to admit, you know, and this is after Quebec City and being burned out from school and the ride. And I had to admit that, you know, striving for those perfect grades, or striving for, you know, those, you know, doing everything to that standard is really a problem for me. In that, you know, a lot of what you see, it comes from monumental effort, and it comes from putting a lot of pressure on myself, you know, a great deal of pressure. And yeah, this kind of jogged me into thinking about, all right, why is that, and having a look at it. So that's what I want to talk about today. So getting right to it, perfectionism, you know, the need to do things exceptionally well. I could say part of it comes in a very healthy way. I'm gonna say particularly from my father. You know, he always set the example that anything worth doing is worth doing very well, and you know, you do your best. And that was certainly taught to me and my sister growing up. And she and I have talked about this subsequently, you know, and yeah, it's definitely there. Perfectionism is when that runs amok, or you can't, you know, I talked about self-regulation and those things, you know, when that runs in overdrive and you can't kind of regulate that behavior, which is exactly how that has become a problem for me. So there's the, you know, the very admirable trait of just wanting to do well. That's kind of one part of it. But there's the other parts where it goes amok, especially when we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder or operational stress injury. You know, one is it's a form of escapism. And I can look back on my professional career, I can look back on the last year as a student, and throwing yourself into a task and getting buried in the minutia of that task and all the small details and making sure everything is perfect is a form of escapism. And I have been very honest about the fact that I used work as an escape. I used it as an escape from, you know, my own personal struggles. I used it as an escape from troubles within relationships. And part of that, you know, part of that escaping into work was doing things and doing them really well and making sure they were perfect. And again, you know, in terms of career, just like grades, that did me a world of good in terms of, you know, career progression and acknowledgement. But, you know, on the psychosocial side of it, not so much. So there's definitely that form of escapism within perfectionism. You know, you're escaping into that task to do everything just right. I think probably maybe one of the more pertinent aspects of perfectionism as it relates to PTSD was proving that I'm okay. You know, as I said, you know, I was really selling this image of, you know, I'm fine. Yeah, maybe I got this injury, but look, you know, I'm good. And when you're knocking things out of the park, whether it be grades, taskings at work, or just work in general, hobbies, anything you do, you know, what I'm presenting to the world is, you know, look, I'm fine. You know, I could point to, you know, my PER, my personnel evaluation report, which is basically our ranking once a year. And mine were always kind of what we say is right justified, you know, everything over to the max, mastered, outstanding, immediate, we would have called it, you know, which is kind of the best you can get in terms of assessments. That's what's going to get you promoted. And not that I was hungry for chasing promotion, and not that I was hungry for praise and accolades. And I kind of talked about that, you know, a few weeks ago, but why, you know, praise and accolades weren't always necessarily a good thing. But that PER was kind of that once a year where I said, you know, okay, we're going to give the devil his due. I know I did a good job, and here's my paperwork to prove it. So part of that is proving to the outside world that, look, I'm okay. If I wasn't okay, could I do this? Would my PERs say this? Would I have been able to, you know, complete that task or, you know, do whatever it is I'm doing to that standard if I wasn't okay? And just as much as proving it to the outside world, I'm proving it to myself. I'm proving to myself that, yeah, look, I'm all right. I'm killing this. You know, all the proof is in the performance, right? So that's that other side of perfectionism, is the you know, proving that, look, I obviously don't have a problem if I can do this. The last part of it, and the part that you know, and this is what struck me. So we're having this discussion, and I say, you know, he said, yeah, you're doing great in school. That's awesome. And I said, yeah, but is it? And there's another guy there. He's a firefighter. And I can see the light coming on for this guy. Something is kind of, you know, he's picked up on something that's being said. And again, this is one of the reasons why I love this example, because it's exactly the point of peer support. It is exactly the point of getting out and getting engaged with people and talking about these things. And he relates this story of how he was basically given the job as a training safety officer. So he's responsible for safety standards within his fire department, or his, you know, his ladder, or his detachment, or whatever. And he talked about the immense pressure that, you know, if anything went wrong, if anybody got hurt, how that pressure was all on him as the training safety officer. And, you know, and he kind of said, you know, as he heard me talking about perfectionism, he recognized that those were some things that he was doing. And of course, as soon as he did that, the light came on for me. And I look back to my time as an infantry instructor. And any of my students would probably tell you, I was pretty intense as an infantry instructor. And my friends that I worked with at the time, they're going to say the same of them. You know, these were people who were very intense, and you want to talk about, you know, putting the effort in to make sure everything was done and everything was done right. There was a whole training cadre of us doing that. And so yeah, he talked about that pressure. So that really comes to that fourth part of perfectionism, and that's ownership. And I know I've talked about, you know, taking ownership of things before and how that can go awry. But I immediately look back to my time as an infantry instructor, and I've talked to some of my friends about it. One in particular who said, you know, Mike, when we were there teaching, we were angry, and people said we were passionate and dedicated. He said, but man, we were angry, and I can't disagree with him. We were. At least I can look inwards and say I was. And you know, and pretty standard procedure, you turn anger into motivation. So yeah, we were angry a lot of the time. Not necessarily angry with our students, or but you know, it was an outlet for anger. And then you add perfectionism to that and ownership. And there was a lot of pressure. And I think looking back at it, that pressure of ownership was absolutely crushing. And, there was the feeling, for me anyway, I'll speak for myself. We're training these young soldiers, most of them young soldiers, most of them men. Actually, 99.9% of them were men. So we're teaching these young men, giving them their basic infantry qualification. And we know where they're going. Without doubt, most, if not all, of the soldiers we put through developmental phase 1 DP1 infantry were going to Afghanistan. They were going to war. And that idea, as my firefighter friend mentioned, of if anything happens, I'm responsible, that loomed very large. And we knew we were sending them to war. We knew what they were in for because every one of us had been there. And there was that feeling that if we didn't do it right, or say for me, if I didn't do it right, if I didn't give them every bit of instruction that I could, if I didn't make sure they were absolutely good to go by the time they left Meaford, the training center, that I failed them. And I've set them up to be harmed in any number of ways. Further to that is the fact that once we trained these soldiers and they went out to their units, well, those units are our families. I'm sending guys to 2 RCR. They're going to be there with my comrades, with my brothers, the people I went through with, the people I've worked with for years. And if they're not up to snuff, then they have the potential to create situations where the people I love are going to get hurt. And there's that pressure of ownership to make sure that everything is just perfect. And yeah, it put a huge amount of pressure on me. And I know it put a huge amount of pressure on the students, because where does that pressure go? It transfers to them. That being said, I'm incredibly proud of the students that I had a part in graduating through their basic infantry training. I know some of them have gone on to do incredible things, they've become better soldiers than I ever hoped I could be. Really, as an instructor, what more do you want? But there's no doubt in my mind that perfectionism and that pressure wasn't always healthy for me or for students. And it's hard to say that, because I look back, the highlight of my career was teaching basic infantry. It was the absolute highlight of my career. To look back and say that my performance was, I know I did a good job, absolutely. I know I was dedicated. I know my heart was in the right place, but I also know that because of my injury and because of the way I was choosing to manage it, or mismanage it, I allowed that to impact people in possibly a negative way. Yeah, that's a hard pill to swallow. But, when we look at perfectionism and we look at escapism and all those things, it just comes with it. And of course, when you're in the middle of managing an injury like that, when you're in the middle of hiding an injury like that, it doesn't leave much room for introspection. It doesn't leave much room for looking at it and going, okay, is everything I'm doing here, is this the right way to do it? But, it is definitely, since the ride, in the last year of working hard to, on the treatment side of things instead of management, it's good to be able to look at these things and not just take them at face value, and to be able to say, okay, what's really going on here? What's this really about? And it's difficult to do that. It's a lot of energy to do that, but it's absolutely worthwhile. And I'm really happy for that journey. I'm really happy for the fact that I can walk into a place and sit amongst my peers, veterans and first responders, and have these conversations that don't have to be super heavy, and they don't always have to be. They don't always have to be like the posts from the last few weeks. They don't always have to be these huge, massive admissions and revelations. They can be pretty innocuous, but as long as they are generating introspection and reflection, and you're genuinely looking at things and questioning, okay, what have I been doing and why? And is it working? Should I continue to do that? You know, in terms of perfectionism, should I continue to strive towards excellence? Absolutely. Should I do it mindlessly with every single task I encounter, as I have been? Is there a need for me to absolutely slay every single thing I do? Is everything worthy of that much effort? No, absolutely not. And, you know, one of the principles of war, economy of effort, you know, pick your battles, pick where you're going to apply your effort, decide, okay, this is good with a 60% solution, this one needs a 90% solution, you know, and there are very few things that need a 100% solution. But when you're trying to do everything if you're trying to achieve that 100% solution in everything you do, that's a lot of energy and a lot of pressure. And that's definitely where I was finding myself. Certainly within the last year, but certainly longer than that. But definitely with my schoolwork. But anyway, enough of that for today. My hope is that this video is, again, you know, for somebody out there, the chronic overachiever, the workaholic, the perfectionist. I know you're out there. I know some of you by name. Yeah, I hope this, you know, you've watched this and maybe it's given you a chance to have a bit of reflection of your own and go, yeah, you know, maybe I could chill a little bit. And honestly, I've very purposefully worked, you know, working with my therapist, working with my coach, to actually say, okay, I want to try and dial this back. I want to be very deliberate in how I apply my effort. And I'm going to tell you, it's hard. It's hard. You sit down to the computer, and you know, even today I was working away at one little project, and I sit down, and next thing you know, I'm getting into the weeds and I'm going hard, and it's easy to get caught up in it. So you know, again, that's a learning process. It's developing new tools and strategies for dealing with this, because the ones I used for years, yeah, they served me certain times and places, but now it's time to reevaluate. And yeah, guys, that's it. Should be coming at you next week with another announcement. This one, or another video. I already spelled it, announcement. This one hopefully a little more exciting, a little more engaging, and yeah, I'm gonna, like I said, enjoy kind of my paddle here while I have the weather for it, and I will talk to you guys next week. If you're experiencing troubles, if you're struggling, reach out. If you find you're in a good place, then maybe it's time to start looking out, reaching in towards your buddies, check on them, see how they're doing. I'll leave you with that this week, guys, and yeah, we'll see you later.